Today we're here with Colin Sueyres. He is the president of the Western Propane Gas Association. I just sat through a session at the WPGA event where Colin spoke about pretty much the pressure that the industry's under with the propane. And I think one thing that was a takeaway for me, besides all the stats that you talked about on like the things that are coming and the bills and stuff like that, was there's the ability to diversify and minimize some of the pressure, like in the current state, right? What happens in, further from here, we're gonna have to keep learning that, right? Would you say that was fair assumption? Or fair dive into like kind of like what you did?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the big takeaway I like to say is, and the reason why I always end on that kind of a higher note when I'm talking is, it is very easy if you work in a fossil fuel industry to be entirely doom and gloom, especially if you work in a fossil fuel industry in a state like California. All you hear all the time is you're bad, you're dirty, you're not sustainable. And so I think a lot of marketers who don't have a level of education about the market or a technical sophistication go, oh my God, the sky is falling, woe is me. The point that I made that is completely accurate is gallons are growing in California, even with the intense regulatory environment that we have. And it's because our marketers have seen that challenge and responded really deftly. So we've had a lot of marketers who knew nothing about power generation that said, okay, the lights are flickering in California. We're seeing challenges with grid stability. And so they moved into an area they'd never been before. Maybe they only sold the forklifts. And now they're working and selling Generacs and installing larger tanks at some of their residential customers. Or these are folks who already sell for forklift fleets, maybe at like a warehouse, but now they're also selling that warehouse a combined heat and power system. And so, on the downside is these regulations are really intense and sort of existential, and they can keep, if you're a business owner or your GM, it can keep you up at night, but it's not without opportunities, because there is always the demands of energy are never going away. Energy and economic activity are inextricably linked. There's a lot of economists who've done a lot of studies, including a lot of very active, very hardcore environmentalists who've tried to say, well, no, we can split those two things, but it's not true. When economy is growing, energy use is going up. And as long as propane continues to exist as a super high density, super portable fuel, there are always going to be opportunities to get things to utilize that fuel.
Love that. What we do at Maderia Group is we're a marketing firm. We do consulting work. We're really good at, because the industry is consolidating, we're really good at when our client is going and purchasing another business. We're really good at gathering all of that and minimizing the attrition of the customer loss, on that transition. I wanted to ask you if you could tell in few words, you could tell a propane company, forget location-wise, with the given state of the country, 3 or 4 things that they should be doing or need to think about doing, what would they be?
It's the very first one is, especially in states that are not as heavily that are not, they don't have the level of onerous regulation that California does, is look at your diversity. Are you exclusively residential? Are you exclusively commercial? Are you exclusively industrial? And understand your market that you currently have as well as you possibly can. Because I think that's the other thing too, is it's really important for folks to be able to take stock and go, I'm very good at residential sales. Okay, maybe I'm not as good as commercial or industrial sales. And that understanding allows you to go, okay, once I know a segment of the economy that I'm really good at, maybe you go, I could never do auto gas. Because the idea of setting up a filling station with card locks, maybe they're just a propane marketer and not, say, a gasoline or a diesel marketer, and so they go, I can't. But if you know the residential market, you go, okay, then that opens up home heating, space and water, home cooking. Oh, backup generation. Maybe I can get into backup generation. Same tank. All it means is I need to get the technical expertise of maybe hiring someone who is a mechanic or an installer.
Yep.
And I need to go find someone who's actually manufacturing and partner up. So one is to get an understanding of what your current market looks like, because that shows you the paths forward for expanding within that particular segment of the market. The second thing is understand your reach. And this is true for pretty much all businesses that I've worked with throughout the years. But if you're in a very small location, you are more at risk to regulation and the winds and wills of government than anywhere else. Because if you're in just California, then you have to worry at a much higher level about regulations, policies, government officials than if you were in California and Nevada and Arizona. Perfect example of this is on the trucking side. If you have an older diesel engine in a bobtail, and you're in a state like California, which says at a certain period, you got to get rid of that engine. Well, your choices are either scuttle it, drop it off and try and get some cash for metal recycling, or sell it out of state. Now, if you have a presence in multiple states, you can take that bobtail tractor and move it to that other state where it's still okay to be used and extend the useful life of that truck.
Right.
If you don't have that footprint, then you're stuck. Then your only choice is either scrapping it or selling. So, we have a lot of very large regional marketers who have been expanding that way because it gives them a little bit of ability to go, okay, I can gain 3 to 5 years of useful life over a technology or a device or a piece of equipment by moving it around jurisdictions. And then the third is, what are you willing to do? How long are you in this fight for? If you're a multi-generational business, every marketer has to sit there and look at that next generation, the kids, grandkids, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, and go, do they want to work in this industry? Do they want to commit to it? Are they interested in it? And there's nothing wrong if those folks go, I'm going to be the last generation. But you need to understand what your transition plan is as an owner, because to a certain degree, if you're not growing, you're dying. It's true in pretty much every industry, but propane is especially true because of the regulatory challenges. You need to be thinking 10, 20, 30, 50 years down the road about your business, because one, that helps you organize those first 2 points, which is where are we and where do we want to be? But it also helps you figure out internally, and who do I want doing that work? And that's something we talk a lot about through the Western Association is leadership development. Now, mostly I'm talking about it through, if you're someone who works in an office and you're not in the executive management, I want to be able to pull you in, get you on one of our committees, developing you. Maybe you want to be a board member or an officer at some point. So I talk a lot about through governance, but it's equally important on the
getting them
business side.
involved.
Yeah, it's getting the person who's working in that yard cleaning bobtails to moving into the mechanic side, to moving into the front office, moving into sales, moving into GM. You have to understand who your next generation of leadership is going to be within your company, because that's also the person that, let's say you want to expand in the home market into backup generators. Maybe that's the person that you go, I think that person's going to be a GM in one of my field offices. I'm going to task them with taking on this backup generator business. I'm going to have them go talk to one of the manufacturers and see if they can take that on. And that's
build that relationship.
Build those relationships,
absolutely.
Build that knowledge base, because you never know where your next, major line of business is going to come from.
Those are great pointers. I appreciate it. You mentioned one thing about the companies going to die. We in our world, we say if you're on the second page of Google too long, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Yes. But one other thing I think would be cool conversation be, we do a lot of like investigating for our clients, especially the ones that have an acquisition schedule that's a lot heavier and much more aggressive. And what's the DNA look like of a company that's like not advertising they're for sale yet, but what's that DNA look like of like, should I just go and ask that guy if he's willing to sell because I see this, and this going on? Like, what is that DNA look like?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, you should talk to some of the folks at Cetane et al. Because
Steve's a good buddy.
I was going to say, because I bet you they know exactly what might get upset at me for giving away some of the secret sauce. But, the thing that you have to look at is, especially, it comes down to footprint. So those same things that I say that a smart marketer that's looking to, establish the future of their business needs to look at ways to diversify, ways to potentially expand into other markets. If you're not diversifying, if you're not expanding, if you're fairly geographically isolated, that's usually a good tell that even if you're not interested in selling, there may come a point in the not too distant future where you're going to at least kick the tires and start talking to some of the dealers about what it would look like on the market. Because, we were talking about this just before the cameras turned on, but the propane industry is 15 to 20 years behind where the oil industry is. We saw through the 2000s, up until the Great Recession, tightened some of that money. But, the 2000s and early 2010s, there were buying bonanzas. They're still buying bonanzas for oil marketers because folks are realizing to make those economies of scale work, you have to have a certain size. And that's where all the private equity is driving towards. We're just starting to tiptoe into that world in the propane sector, but it's coming, and it's out of necessity. Anyone that gets that heavily regulated, you need to diversify. You need to think about where you are, how you can expand, because it just becomes more expensive for the regulatory compliance. And if you can't meet economies of scale on a large enough size, those regulations will just crush you. And it's not even just the cost. Think about it like this. If you're a large multi-state marketer, you can afford to hire a compliance officer in-house. You can afford to hire someone to run your regulatory affairs practice. If you're a mom and pop marketer, you got to rely on someone like me and the state associations to provide that technical expertise. And if you don't have that through your state association, because you're in a smaller region of the country, then it's on you to provide that. And if you're too small of a business and you're at a tight profit margin, who's going to help you do the forms and filings? Who's going to help you meet the reporting requirements? It's a challenge. And those are, usually big klaxons going off in my head when I see stuff like that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, that's, I think the direction, that the oil is headed is really scary. And it's almost like it's paved the way for the propane industry to ring the alarm bells a little earlier maybe than the heating oil industry did. And now they are in a spot where it's like, are we up Schitt's Creek without a paddle here?
Yeah.
Or, but at least propane, I feel like, they got a shot here to really nip this in the butt before it gets too far.
I will say, I think there's a lot of great work being done by a lot of state executives. And I also think we are extraordinarily lucky as an industry to have someone like Steve Kaminsky at NPGA and Tucker at PERC, because they get it. They get it to the core of their being, and they are there. It's, we talk a lot about this in executive leadership calls, but the propane industry sits on a three-legged stool. There's PERC, there's NPGA, and there's the state execs. And the nice thing is we know there's leadership at NPGA, we know there's leadership at PERC, and now there's a lot of new leadership at the state associations that can meet an equivalent need that we've seen that the national side is taking care of. So, but it is important because unless we're all working in tandem, if we're smart, we're ahead of the curve. there's a lot of states. California, we're playing catch up a little bit, but there's a lot of states in this country.
California's like a different animal.
It is. California is just, it's kind of on the bleeding edge. You know, we're, you know, you're welcome for the iPhones. We're sorry for everything else, you know? But
that's good. I like that. I'm stealing that, by the way.
Yeah, no, feel free. It's yours. But but it is true, is like, you look at a state like Missouri, you know, they got great leadership with Steve Aarons, but Missouri is also one of those places where we had a lot of manufacturers move from California to Missouri because of cheap cost of electricity, cheaper land. But, you know, what happens if Missouri decides to wake up one day and says, well, the cost of electricity is so cheap, why would we need to procure propane? And we don't have to worry about environmental permitting getting in the way of installing, you know, backup, you know, electricity and batteries and bringing more stuff in the grid. And there's going to be a lot of states in this union where they're not going to have to deal with the things we're dealing with in some of these high regulation states, where we're doing this because it's for the environment. It'll be an issue of, we're going to do it because it's cheap.
Yes, exactly.
And how do you argue with consumers that they should use propane when it's more expensive than electricity? Consumers are going to go where consumers go, and that's the cheapest possible dollar.
Oh, price drives. I feel like if you took a room full of 100 consumers, and let's just say it's a mixed bag of heating oil, propane, electric, alternatives.
Yep.
And you said to them all, like, what makes you decide on utilizing the fuel that you have at your house? I don't know, I get a good price. It's like, and it's 90%.
Yeah.
The other 10% is like, oh, my house came with it and I just don't feel like changing.
Yeah.
Or which happens also because we survey our clients' customers a lot, is they actually generally love the company they're doing business with,
right,
because they deliver on time.
Yep.
It's easy to do business with them.
Right.
They make it easy to talk to them, you know, online through chat or their portals and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, price is the driver of, like, I feel like what the consumer is going to tell whoever they want.
We've got marketers who have, you know, acres and acres of solar on their homes, their farms, or stuff like that. It's not because they're doing it because they want to be good for the environment. You know, they're already committed. And not only that, most of them, you know, spit through their teeth when they're talking about our local electric utilities. They're doing it because it saves them money.
Yeah.
They're doing it because it saves every last red cent they can get from what they're having to pay on their electricity bill. The market always wins. It is going to move, you know, and relationships absolutely do matter, but relationships matter to a point. And if you're having to compete with someone who's using coal-fired electricity that costs, you know, half a kilowatt hour equivalent to a therm of propane does, that savvy, sophisticated consumer is going to go, I really like you, but
yeah,
I can go there for half the cost.
we can still have a beer. We can still play around at golf.
Yeah.
But us doing business together doesn't have some longevity to it.
Right.
Not so interesting. I mean, Colin, you sound like you're, like, busy, like balls to the wall constantly. What do you do to, like, literally shut it down? Like, or do you shut it down? Because there's some of us that have trouble shutting it down. Like, what do you do to shut it down?
When I was a single lad running amok, I would be burning the candle at both ends, and I would be enjoying myself some of the, as they're like saying down this neck of the woods, the brown party liquor. So I'm a huge bourbon aficionado.
Nice.
Got quite the collection at home.
Nice.
Since getting married and having kids, that's gone downhill somewhat, out of necessity, just because, you know, dad having a glass of bourbon while he's also trying to do dishes and do laundry and stuff doesn't exactly fly. So I'm a youth sports coach.
Sweet.
So that I try and channel my frustration with policymakers into helping shape and mold young minds.
Take a lap.
Yeah. Luckily mine are still at the age where they think running is fun.
Oh, nice.
So it hasn't turned into a punch.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, go and touch the cone. They're like, yeah. No, but I love playing golf.
Nice.
It is rare that I can get more than a couple hours together enough to string even 9 holes, but I love playing golf. I actually love working out. There is nothing that in my mind I'm lifting that heavy barbell or throwing that kettlebell around, and I imagine that I am crushing an electric transformer underneath my hands while I'm doing it. So that's how I get. And other than that, it's I eat, sleep, breathe this stuff. I'm on my phone. I try and be good. Get my knuckles wrapped by my wife every once in a while for answering emails too late at night.
Same.
But,
know that all too well.
But that's the whole reason I took the job back in July. It was, and I told this to my hiring committee. They said, "Why would you want to come into this industry?" And I go, I've spent 20 years in public policy, working in energy and water, natural resources, and I've taken paycheck from a lot of people, some of whom I don't like all that much. I'd much rather work for somebody and put in the hours for somebody in a group of people that I actually want to pick fights on behalf of.
Yeah.
And it makes those 80-hour weeks, those 100-hour weeks, it's not work, it's fun. It's because I get to fight on behalf of people I want to fight for, which is, as an advocate, you don't get a lot of opportunities to do that.
It's funny you say that. I come from family business, commercial fishing fleet, and we grew up, in that family owned and operated world. But my dad was like, you're gonna ban the lobsters, then you're gonna learn how to put the baits together, then you're gonna learn how to do this, and I didn't run one of the boats until I was 20.
Oh, yeah.
I had my captain's license when I was 16, but I wasn't even allowed to run one of the boats until I was 20, and he went through the gauntlet, with him. But to celebrate wins with your families, it's a different feeling. And the cool thing about what we do is, especially on the marketing side, is we get to celebrate those wins. And I know, because a lot of the businesses are still family owned and operated. I don't care how big, they're still family owned and operated. So being on the marketing side and getting to celebrate those wins with them when they have a monster month or, pick up some huge commercial accounts or whatever the case may be, but knowing what they're feeling, it gets me out of bed every day, So that's a cool concept that we treasure for sure.
And that's part of that's one of the greatest strengths I think that we as an industry, we sometimes forget about. And that's something I usually like reminding a lot of my marketers about, is going yes, we provide energy and power, but you're also a business that employs generations of family.
Yep.
You're integral to your community. The amount of times where I ask my marketers, they go, "Oh, we just donated hundreds of gallons of propane for Thanksgiving so that the local food shelter can make turkeys for homeless people." I'm like, "Why are you not telling me that?" They go, "Oh, we just do it." And that's this industry. It's the best thing about this industry. We do it just because we're part of the community. We do it, and that's part of also why I'm here, is to take those things and weaponize them and give the folks who are already doing such great work in their communities the ability to actually say, hey, legislator, elected official, you have to pay attention to that, because those are your constituents too.
No.
These people have been here for 70, 80, 90 years, and it's not because they're just collecting a buck. This is important to them. You have to take that into account.
We sometimes have to beg to I love the way the word you use, weaponize their philanthropic initiatives that they take, because they'd prefer almost to keep it as a secret.
Right.
And I'm like, guys, I'm sorry. I know that you don't want everyone to know that you're doing this or doing that, but they need to know.
Right.
We have to weaponize it. We have to publicize it. And they're like, well, I just don't want to beat my chest. I'm like, it's not beating your chest. No. It's showing that you give a shit about what the hell's going on.
Right. So going back on the point I was talking about earlier, with the level of sophistication, ability to staff up for different responsibilities within your own company. Goes the same thing for marketing, external affairs, PR, however you want to call it. You know, if you're a smaller marketer operating on margins, you can't afford to hire a full-time external affairs director or a full-time marketing director in-house. You have to find a trusted partner that goes, I get it, and also understanding it's not braggadocio if it's accurate. It's one thing if you go, we're doing this, we're doing that, and you're not. But if you're contributing to your local economies, if you're a active member of your community, if you've got staff that sit on nonprofit boards and you're doing this and doing that, it behooves you to be able to tell the wider public what you are doing. And if you don't have that in-house, it also behooves you to make a smart move and find a trusted partner in the industry who gets the industry to help you share that story.
Yeah.
You know, and not only that, but I'll say through our state association, we try and do that, but there's also limits on what we can do for an individual marketer. We try and celebrate the industry at large. We love to take stories and, you know, disseminate it more widely, but that's still something, if you're that's marketing, that's on you as the individual company to try and take care of.
Oh, man, I love that. This has been fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I always end these, and we've just really met about 5 minutes ago, which is great. But I always end these with letting whoever I'm chatting with ask me a question, anything family, business, anything like that, whatever you want.
All right. So you said you were in the commercial fishing industry.
Yes.
Northeast. Lobster?
Yes.
Okay. So then the question is, because I'm a California guy, I used to work in aquaculture.
Yep.
I care very deeply. Lobster or Dungeness crab?
Preferred. For me?
Yes.
Oh, Dungeness all day.
That's all I need
Dungeness all day.
That's all I need to hear. All right.
You know what it is too for me is like for the lobsters. Oh, my dad will probably say this. He's gonna kick my ass, right? And he sees me. I just like know what they eat.
Yeah.
Like the lobsters, like, because it's like I touch it and like, you know, or used to. I don't go out on the boats anymore, but and like they're such bottom feeders, and Dungeness crabs are bottom feeders too. But lobsters are just like I mean, you know the story of lobsters, right?
Yeah.
So when back in the day, they were so prevalent, they would just crawl up on the beach, and so. The people that were in prison, that's what they served prisoners, lobster.
Yep. And
I don't know, like it's just, again, I mean, because I've eaten it so much, I'm just like, lobster. You know, and I own a couple seafood markets too.
Okay.
And so we got voted the best lobster roll in southeastern Connecticut by like a prestigious newspaper and stuff like that. And I just still am like, everyone's like, oh, you have the best lobster. I'm like, yeah, sure. So Dungeness crab I would prefer over that, but my favorite is king crab. I absolutely love king crab. Just roll out of the shell, and I'm lazy man style. My wife and I went on a second honeymoon because our first one had to get cut short because she started a huge job with the government.
Okay.
And so we just got back from it, and they like cut it all open for you, and you basically just like and I'm just like, oh my god, I'm like, this is way too easy.
Us humble Dungeness folks are sitting there with crackers and pictures and making a little meat pile. Well, actually, I mean, I love Dungeness, and I go to as many crab feeds as I can, but I actually love going into Tamales Bay in California and going abalone diving.
Really?
You can get one abalone per person per year in the state of California, but you go in with a crew, and you go and you dig it out of the bed yourself and grill it right there on the coast of California. So if you've never done that, strongly encourage you taking a trip up to wine country and then cutting right over to the Northern California coast.
So, all right, that just leads me to one last question.
Yeah.
What's more regulated, the catching of the crabs or the propane? Or what is potential?
I will say aquaculture, only because there's one guy, and I know him. He's based out of Eureka, California, and if the domoic acid comes back a little too high, he can shut down the entire season on the coast for as long as he says.
That is wild.
So luckily, we don't have any individual in the state of California and go, no propane for anyone. I shouldn't say that, though. I might give him ideas. Jesus.
Colin, this is
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Appreciate it.